Okay, my name is JB Omkangala. I am a Kenyan author. I have been an author for 1.5 years now, and currently I have 6 books, of which 2 I have co-authored with some other authors, but 3 are my own novels. JB Omkangala was born in Busia County, raised in Busia County, schooled in Busia County. I went to Muyafa Primary School. From there, I went to Nyahobi Secondary School for my KCSE. Then from there, I went to Chuka University, where I studied sociology and linguistics. Before becoming an author, I was a teacher for close to 6 years. What inspires me to write is that from high school, I've been a good writer, and even some of my compositions and essays were being kept by the teacher of English so that can be used as reference later on. But with time, I developed that interest in literature, and I started writing articles, from which I now became an author. I started writing for publishing purposes in 2019, but my first book was published in 2021 when schools had been closed and most of us were at home, could not go to work. So I used to write from home using my smartphone, and that's how I wrote my first book, which has been one of my readers' favorite book, Torn Between. Torn Between is a book that talks about romance. It also talks about the Maasai culture, the Meru culture, and the Luya culture. Now, in most of my books, I write about culture because I am a social linguist, that is sociology and linguistics. Therefore, I am someone who is very passionate about African culture. And I also like romance because romance helps me to widen my scope of readers, in that we can have the young generation reading and the older generation also reading my books. So that's why I mix romance and culture at the same time. What takes one to be a good author is, first of all, you must be having that passion of writing. And then you must be someone who is so much into reading. Reading improves someone's writing skills. It also widens someone's imagination, so that when you are writing a story, you don't limit yourself just to what you know, but you can still write about things that maybe you read. And when you read a book, sometimes you read as a writer, it helps you to identify some of the things that you can write about to make your story more interesting, or to cover so that your readers will enjoy more than when you are just writing about all that you know. Kenyans are reading, but the problem has been the education system that we have in Kenya does not encourage people to read after school. Most of the Kenyans read just for exam purposes, and most of them read books that are meant for as set books. But when it comes to reading books for enjoyment, most of the Kenyans have not been doing that, because even the traditional publishers, whom we depend on very much, do not give a priority books that people read for enjoyment. They give priority books that go to school directly. Kenyan reading culture is growing. That one I can attest, because since I started publishing books, I have been able to sell a lot of books, especially my first book, the second book, and the third. All of them are selling. I can't say that there's a book that is not selling. All of them are selling. And I can say, yes, if you are not writing books, you can say Kenyans are not reading, but we have Kenyans who are ardent readers. The Midnight Sun was my second book. This one is about the Iteso culture, and also it talks about the plight of single parenting, especially single mothers. I was inspired to write this book when I was working on Torn Between. There was a lady from Teso who was helping me as my editor. Then when we completed Torn Between, I promised her that I was going to write a book that talks about her culture. That is the Iteso. Many people think that I'm an Iteso, but that is not true. But when I finished writing Torn Between, I started researching about the Iteso culture. Now, after researching about the Iteso culture, I came and sit down and wrote a book. But now I asked myself, is this book just going to be about Iteso culture? I hate to get something that is an issue in the contemporary society so that I spice it with the Iteso culture. I make the book have the Iteso setting, Iteso culture, but the issues, the social issues being addressed are key issues, are contemporary issues that most people can relate to. Because if you look at our generation today, it's like there is a rise in single parenting. Actually, many children are being raised by single parents, and it is a problem. Though sometimes we don't view it as a problem because we have normalized it. It's like people are trying to weigh if they can actually do it on their own. But it's going to be a problem because if you've been raised by two parents and then you raise your child as a single mother or as a single father, when this child becomes of age and wants to get maybe married, are you going to encourage that child to get married? And if this child is using you as their role model, do you think they're going to get married? What is going to be their view about marriage? That is what The Midnight Sun is all about. Marriage of Dolls is a sequel of Torn Between, which is a trilogy. I will have the third part of it later on, maybe next year. This book is, as I said, is the second part of Torn Between, which now talks about problems in marriage. The book suggests diplomatic way that used to solve problems in marriages, but it brings them the solutions out in a very hilarious way. That's why we call it a marriage of dolls. A marriage of dolls means either people who are immature or people who are behaving like they are crazy or they're just hilarious. Just like they're cartoons. So we have a way of solving problems at marital level, in marriages, that does not involve violence. Yes, we might have differences here and there, but there's a way we can solve problems in marriages that is not violent. What a marriage of dolls is all about when it comes to social issues. But this marriage of dolls talks about the Agikuyu culture, it talks about the Maasai culture, it talks about the Akamba culture, it also talks about the Ameru and the Luya culture. Okay, I write most of the time about the African culture because I came to realize that most of the authors prefer writing about imaginary things. Yes, you're a fiction author, but you find that you've written several books, but you are not saying anything about Africa. I started writing with the view of writing mainly about my community, because we have a lot of things in my community that we used to know when we were young, but the subsequent generation do not know anything about that. And now, being a sociologist, it pushes me to study more about other people, their culture, their language. I can actually speak several languages, local languages, because of that interest in learning their culture and their way of life. And there's no way you can learn people's culture without learning their language. One of my best authors was H.R. Olekulet. Unfortunately, he passed on, but he happens to be one of the people I have admired in this field. I also admire Ngugi wa Thiong'o very much, and there is Francis Imbuga, though Francis Imbuga's books have always been plays, but I'm writing novels, though in future I might also consider writing plays, but he has also been an inspiration. Reading his books, I've read almost all of them, and they were very nice books. And then another one is Ruganda, John from Uganda. That one was also a very nice author, and I like his books. People might not know that I am born in a family of 10, whom I hardly talk about. People might also not know that I actually did not pursue journalism, though I pose as someone who pursued journalism because I like journalism so much. And people might also not know that I have been a teacher of English literature, but my profession is not teaching. My viewers and my followers and my readers, I would like to tell you that I am in this to stay. I am going to churn out a lot of books in the near future, and we are also learning a few things here and there. I'm trying to improve the quality of my books, because when I started, there are a lot of things I didn't know. I have been learning them, and in the subsequent books, you will see a different author, because I always strive to make sure that I give out my best. So when I've already learned something, I try to ensure that I increase it or I make it better in future.